Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Susan McCloskey, and I want to welcome you to the second of a series of 3 webinars that AbleNet is hosting on the quality indicators for assistive technology. This one is the practical uses of QIAT, school districts using quality indicators for assistive technology to improve assistive technology services. And working with you today, guiding you through this hour, are going to be myself, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll move on to my colleagues. I am a speech-language pathologist. I've been a member of the Quality Indicator for Assistive Technology leadership team since all of this indicator business started way back in 1998. I was working in Pennsylvania at the time. I worked in Pennsylvania for 26 years, both in the schools and as a member of the statewide project that today is known as PATAN. I moved to Florida 14 years ago and had a position as a chairperson for a district assistive technology team. I retired in June of 2016, and I continue to be involved with the world of assistive technology. I'm doing consulting for the state of Florida, both with a statewide project and with individual districts, and also with the state of New Hampshire, which is also involved with the quality indicators for assistive technology. Terry, I'm going to pass it to you.
Hello, good morning and good afternoon, like Susan said. I'm Terry Foss, and my background is in special education. I've been a teacher for decades for students with autism and complex differences. I've also been an AT specialist now for more than 25 years. I too am a member of the QIAT leadership team, and I've been with them, like Susan said, for quite a long time. My school district that I serve is a suburban school district in the Kansas City metro area. We happen to be on the Kansas side. It's a suburban school district of about 25,000 students. I'm also a co-author of Every Move Counts and Every Move Counts Clicks and Chats with my co-author partner, Jane Corsten. And we've worked together now for a very long time, and the Every Move Counts Clicks and Chats book has been out since 2007. We have a number of other projects going, and you might see us at certain conferences throughout the year. The next one will be at the ATIA conference in Orlando, and that's in early February 2018. I may be able to see some of you there. Kathy, I'll pass this on to you.
So good morning, all. I'm Kathy Lalk. I have been an assistive technology specialist with St. Louis County Special School District for many years, 20-plus years. I provide support to teams and about the same number of students as Terry has in the Kansas area. And I've been part of the leadership team also since almost from the beginning, and we're happy that you all are here today. So the next thing we want to do is find out about you. So if you would look at the poll and click in the circle that best describes your function and your role. And it looks like the 3 of us, there's many AT specialists who are joining us today. And I think we're finished. I'm going to skip to the results so everybody can see who's here. Heavily AT specialists, a few OTs and PTs. I always wonder what that other part means. Maybe we should somehow clarify that in another way.
At another time.
At another time. Okay, so we have another poll for you, and we want to know what you know about the quality indicators. And you can choose to answer one or everything that applies in this poll. Okay. I will close it and skip to the results so you can see what your colleagues have said. And it looks like some people own the book or have been to the website. That looks like about half of your responses. In addition to 9% know the quality indicators well. Okay, thank you for that. Oops, wrong way. So when we think about assistive technology and we think about our role for a school district, one of the things that we look at first are the legal mandates to school districts. And many of us are familiar with IDEA, and that we need to think about assistive technology devices and services during every IEP, and also what 504 and the ADA Title II tells us to do. But what we also know is that for many students, technology can be an important tool to improve access to their curriculum and their day-to-day tasks. Technology use becomes assistive technology when it's used to improve a student's functional capabilities. And because of our experience with assistive technology and the teams and the students we support, and because of the federal mandates, we know that we consider assistive technology during every IEP. And it's not the only time that we have to think about assistive technology. We also want every team member to know that they can have conversations about AT during any point of the student's program. So when thinking about AT service delivery, we know that there are many demands that are placed on us, and there's lots of components to high-quality AT services and the delivery of that. And when we think about delivery models, we realize that the delivery model can vary across districts. It can vary across states. Many of you are AT service providers that are in a full-time position. Some of you are in a part-time position. And then some of you are in that sometime job position where sometimes you're an OT, sometimes you're a speech path, and sometimes you're an assistive technology specialist. And in your job and in your services, that may include travel. It might include face-to-face support. It might involve distance learning and different ways that you provide consultative services. So the demands are high, and when you think about capacity building, it's still really challenging. It's still really hard. We know that for all teams, you want to be effective and efficient in the services that you provide, and you're also looking for ways that you can decrease travel time, that you can provide other resources such as virtual learning, and that you want to encourage the staff that you support to take advantage of what's already available in their school, in their district. So when we look at ways to improve delivery service and we think about the challenges, one of the things we want to do is we're always looking at ways to build capacity. How can we have many people, not just a few people, many people know what we know about technology and about assistive technology? And then we want IEP teams to be as comfortable about assistive technology when they're thinking about, here's who my student is, here are the supports that they need, but when it comes to assistive technology, they're not so sure. So then they're calling upon a lot of the people who responded to the poll that they are the AT specialists. They're calling on us because we are the experts, regardless of our experience level, or even not giving enough credit to the experience level that they possess themselves. When we look at duplicated efforts, too often, because teachers are not allowed to leave the classroom, any staff, they're not allowed to have time away anymore, we are doing a lot of side-by-side trainings, and those efforts are being duplicated across the district. If teachers, if staff are able to leave the classroom, then we know that it might be costly for the district because now there has to be a sub that needs to come into the classroom to support that. And there's the time challenge. We all have the time challenges, but technology is changing so quickly that there is some challenge when it comes to learning a new tool becoming fluent with that tool, and then being able to implement the tool or the strategy of assistive technology with with fidelity across all of the environments. So our challenges for time and travel and getting the needed support in a timely manner, building capacity, and sharing responsibility is something that I think we all can relate to. And the quality indicators do a great job of telling us what to do. But what we want to share with you today is how you can do that. So looking at the beginning of the quality indicators for assistive technology, they started as a grassroots effort in 1998 by a group of educators who shared common concerns about issues related to AT training and service delivery. What happened with that grassroots efforts was the creation of the indicators. And the indicators are 8 areas of need. And those areas are consideration, assessment, AT and the IEP, implementation, evaluation of effectiveness, transition, professional development, and administrative support. So they serve as the overarching tool to help districts provide good service models, good service delivery. In addition to that, there are matrices, which are self-assessments that help the team figure out where they are and how they can move to promising practice. There are webinars like the one that you are involved in today, that information. There is also guiding documents on their own and resource documents in the resource bank, many that were created by the Quality Indicator Leadership Team and also many that were created by people like yourselves across the district who found a document that was useful and uploaded it to the site. In addition to that is the listserv, and I saw that many of you were involved in that. The listserv is a place to pose questions about AT and receive responses from people across the world, people who are educators, practitioners, family members, and users of AT themselves. So thinking about how the quality indicators serve as resources and can help school districts, they can help you recognize qualities and characteristics of a quality system because they provide key questions along with extensive case studies and the accompanying self-assessment, which is the matrices, which can help you understand where you are for each indicator area. They help you identify barriers to quality services because what we have are intent statements in each indicator that helps you clarify the meaning of that indicator and also the common errors that help us see what might be happening in our district and happening in many districts, and then how we can move forward to promising practices. And after completing the matrices, there is a self-rating summary sheet. And in using that summary sheet, we're able to project how the changes that we might make, track our strengths and area of need, and then what steps we're going to take next to move toward that promising practice in our service.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. All right, so Kathy's given you a thumbnail sketch of what's out there on the website. We also published a book in 2015 that captures all of this information, so you have multiple ways to access the indicators and the self-evaluation matrices. And our focus today is talking about how school districts might use them. And this has been going on nationally and internationally for quite some time now. So we've always had a lot of very, very good feedback. Those of us on the leadership team have done conferences, throughout the years, and we've had a lot of feedback about how these are being used. When we did the poll earlier and asked you, it looked like several of you are using the indicators in your districts. And for me, I think they are wonderful ways to identify those areas of strength to build upon, as well as those areas that are in need of improvement. And it gives you a very systematic way. I always think of the indicators as like this mapping of, the pathway to promising practice. It gives you a good way to think about assistive technology. And the information that's gained can then be used to plan for changes that lead to district-wide improvement. Using the matrices specifically, again, we're looking at the ability to be able to identify multiple factors that influence the provision of high-quality assistive technology services. Things that you might not have thought about already in your district, as you move through using this self-evaluation tool. Reflecting on current services that you're providing in order to identify the changes that have to be necessary. And I want to say up front that certainly as teams fill out the self-evaluation matrices, the accuracy is obviously based on their particular perception. And it's been so interesting to see that sometimes an individual will complete the self-evaluation matrix looking at their own skills, or an assistive technology team, or an entire district, or an administrative team. I've been involved in situations where that has been done in many different ways. And the best thing is that the matrices identify steps that can be accomplished over time, because we know that this isn't something that's going to change overnight. And what we're going to talk about here as we move forward is just a little bit of an example, because I recently worked with a team in Florida, and I'm not going to identify the district because this is a self-evaluation matrix, and they were kind enough to let me use their data. But we're not going to look at what they did exactly. This is a district, a large-sized district in Florida, about 75,000 students total. They had experienced a lot of staff changes, and that's really why I ended up going in and working with them. They had changes to their assistive technology team. They had changes to their administration. And they were dealing also with a lot of technology tool changes within their district. So before I met with them, we had a certain amount of time, and they made the decision that what they wanted to do was focus on the quality indicators for including assistive technology in the IEP, and the quality indicators for the implementation of assistive technology. So we're just going to focus on those two today. We only have an hour. But as you see on the slide in front of you, these are some of the quality indicators in this area. There are actually 5 indicator statements, so the next slide has the other ones on it. When you're using the matrix, it's really important that you're knowledgeable about the indicator statements themselves. And as Kathy mentioned, each indicator has an intent statement. And we did that so that we could really be clear about what we were trying to say. Sometimes when you read a sentence or you read a statement, your mind goes off in one direction. We wanted to be able to come back and say, all right, this is what we're really talking about here. So that's what those intent statements talk about. And the first one is, making sure that there are guidelines within your agency for documenting assistive technology in the IEP. Making sure that the services that are necessary are going to be included in that IEP, all the way from the selection and acquisition to the implementation of the assistive technology. And the third one is talking about the fact that we're really making sure that the assistive technology is recognized as a tool to support the achievement of the student's goals, and making sure that there's a connection there, and that progress in the general education curriculum is being reflected and looked back and saying, are we giving the student the correct tools that they need to move forward in this area? So the 2 remaining indicators in this area of including AT in the IEP talk about making sure that we're using language that's measurable and observable. And this is so important because you've got a lot of people interacting with the student, and everybody needs to be able to make sure that this is the plan, this is the change that we want to see. And then also making sure that there is that clear and complete description of the devices, the services, whatever those tools are that are going to be made available to this student. So we went through all of these with my example team here in Florida. And it was very interesting for me because as we went through this, they're reading, and we finally come to the common errors, and I hear a little bit of chuckles and chortles, and they said that these common errors resonated so clearly with them. And they were seeing a lot of the same problems. And of course, these common errors are errors that were identified and then commented on conference after conference, you know, and really massaged till we get to the point that, yeah, this stuff is really a problem out there. And a big one being that the IEP teams don't really know how to include AT in the IEP. You have pockets of expertise, but then you have a lot of general situations where people really aren't sure. They are not really substantiating that connection between the use of the assistive technology and the students' progress and the students' need to be able to do certain kinds of tasks, you know, based on the curriculum. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We get to the matrix, and you can see the highlighted areas here. We have indicator number 1 as a 3. And again, what this is an average of the scores that the team members all came up with. So you're seeing kind of a composite score. The agency has guidelines for documenting AT in the IEP, and members of some teams are aware of them. And you'll note as you go through, we have team members not aware, members, some of the teams are aware, and then we have most, and then we have all. So, you know, there's some judgment based in there. But again, based on the perception of the members that I was working with, they came up with a 3. They looked at the second one in terms of the services that the IEP team determines are needed to support the assistive technologies. That was down at a 2. So some of the AT devices and services are minimally documented, and they realized that this was something that they really had to deal with. And they had some concerns, obviously. They knew that there had been a large changeover in staff, and I think a lot of teams and districts across the country are experiencing that. The baby boomers are retiring. You know, we've got new people stepping in and filling their shoes. There's a friend of mine in the field. She talks about the legacy teams. You know, the people who have been around forever are diminishing. In some cases, they're just disappearing. So you've got a lot of newcomers coming in here. And then the third one, again, they scored as a 2. The assistive technology use is sometimes linked to the IEP goals and objectives. And, you know, we know how important that is. So we move on to the 4th and 5th, and they remained at that kind of 2 level. The IEP describes outcomes to be achieved, but they're not measurable, so they might have been putting generalized statements in there. And it was also interesting that this team that I was working with really recognized, as we had got into this kind of a discussion, that they have a couple of issues in their district. You know, one is that at a secondary level, there's a case manager at the IEP meeting, but that person isn't always actually involved with the student throughout the student's school day. So that was something that was a district level challenge that they felt that they really needed to go and discuss. There was also some confusion about how much needed to be put into the IEP if the student was using tools that were actually school-based. So there were already things in that particular school, and the student was doing fine with them, but you know, is that a situation that you really need to document as assistive technology? And of course, they talked about it and they said, well, if you don't, if the student changes schools or moves into another setting where they don't have those tools, then that information, that really, really critical and important information doesn't follow the student. So it was interesting, and we kept kind of moving through this. I'm going to go through the next one now, because as I said, they chose the AT and the IEP, and then they also chose implementation. We went through the 7 indicator areas as we did before, looking for a collaboratively developed plan, looking to make sure that the assistive technology is integrated into the curriculum and the daily activities, looking at a shared responsibility. Can't be one person. And that's such an important concept, and in some cases it's a difficult concept to actually achieve. Indicator number 4 talks about making sure that there are a variety of strategies, including assistive technology. And I'm going to just jump a minute to some of the work I've been doing in New Hampshire, and how interesting it was that the New Hampshire teams really felt so strongly about this because they wanted to make sure that the choices on the part of the student were being acknowledged. And I think they had some situations where they had an outside consultant coming in and making some decisions, and there wasn't a lot of input from the family or from the student. And this is really critical. You know, if you're putting a tool in front of a student, it has to be something that that student is in agreement with. Learning opportunities obviously have to be created, and that's an integral part of implementation. The last 2 indicator statements in this indicator area talk about the need for implementation to be based on initial assessment data, but then constantly and consistently updated based on performance data. And this seemed to be an area, when we'll look at how they scored themselves on the matrix, that was an issue for this particular example school district. And the final one is looking at the maintenance and the management of the equipment and all of the materials. And again, that's something you can't forget about. And we had the same experience looking at the common errors. You know, they were able to really pull out of some of this. And number 2, the plans for implementation were created and carried out really in the majority of cases by one IEP team member. And a lot of the assistive technology team members who I was working with commented that when they are involved a little bit more heavily with a particular student, sometimes that implementation plan tends to be more accurate, more detailed, more consistent, more comprehensive. And they also thought that they were doing a good job with their speech and language staff, because they had had opportunities to bring the speech and language staff in and do a lot of in-servicing with them, do a lot of professional development with them. And so there was a nice little kind of a pass-off or a handoff, from the AT member to the school-based speech and language clinician, especially in those cases where we're talking about students who need augmentative alternative communication supports. So that kind of makes sense. So taking a look at their perception, again, this is an average of the scores of the team members who were responding. They were a little bit higher here. They had some 3s across the board, for collaborating, for integrating the students, the assistive technology into the curriculum, into those daily activities. Responsibility for implementation shared by some. We weren't quite all the way up there to most, but we were at some. And then for that 4th indicator, again, looking, sometimes multiple strategies were encouraged. I think more typically people tend to focus on the name brand of a device, that's out there, instead of also including some of the low-tech strategies that, obviously are important for backup and for situations outside of the classroom where you might not be able to take, the $4,000 piece of equipment. You've got to have that backup system. This indicator area for implementation has 7 indicator statements, so we're looking at the 5th, 6th, and 7th here, and you can see they bumped themselves up to a 4. And again, I thought that was kind of interesting, but that 5th one is really all about training. And this is an assistive technology team that trains constantly. They are out there. In fact, it's one of their biggest areas of frustration. So they're doing a lot of training. They're doing well-received training, but it's almost getting to the point where it's unmanageable because they're out there so much doing the trainings. when we look at indicator number 6 here, talking about the data, this was a similar kind of a statement, because they felt that what was really coming out was if they, as an ATT member, were part of writing that initial report, a lot of that data got into the first IEP that was set up for the student that included a discussion about their assistive technology. But then as time went on, if the ATT member kind of backed off, you weren't seeing that level of comprehensive information being shared from year to year. So that was a concern. And then the final one, looking at the maintenance and the management, they were really very strongly focused on getting families involved, especially when it was augmentative alternative communication. There was a lot of the maintenance and the management that occurred at home with charging schedules, and they had a really nice system for being able to document that and having that discussion with the parents at the IEP team meetings. It wasn't as clear that that kind of discussion was happening when it was more generalized assistive technology for reading or assistive technology for writing. So, you know, they definitely had their pockets of expertise and pockets of information. But, you know, when they looked at this whole issue about the training, back on statement number 5, one of the things that they realized that they're not truly using a team approach. They were each out there carrying their, you know, proverbial little buckets of water, trying to solve the problems. And this opportunity to work through the self-assessment matrix really got them thinking about the fact that there are many locations across their district where people were doing a training on a particular app, for example. And if they were using the virtual teaching tools that they have available in their district, they'd be able to really organize this a lot better, so that you could have one person doing training and they would be hitting 4, 5, or 6 different locations instead of that training having to happen independently in one of those situations. So there are some things to think about when you're dealing with these kinds of strategies. And now I'm going to turn this over to Terry, and she's going to start to talk to us about some information that came from a colleague of ours who was also one of our quality indicator for the Assistive Technology leadership team members. Terry?
Thanks, Susan. I do want to point out that Gail Bowser's name is on this slide, and actually we'll see her name on a number of these slides that are coming up. These are 3 strategies and methods for delivery of AT services that Gail has developed, that she developed this slide around, and most of the following slides. Most likely, AT service is provided through one of these 3 models of service delivery: consultation, collaboration, and coaching. Which of these methods is most appropriate? One of our favorite answers is it depends. It depends on the personality of any given team. One focus of a consultant is a consultant being a person in a position to have some influence over individuals, groups, or organizations to which they are consulting, but who has no direct power to make changes or implement programs. This was taken from Block's 2000 book called Flawless Consulting. I just think this particular focus of consulting sounds very familiar. Some teams may perceive that the AT specialist has some influence. Sometimes this influence may be in the form of gatekeeper of the AT items. Some teams may perceive the AT support person has influence over individuals outside of the IEP team. Also, consulting probably is most often used for something for a specific period of time and for a specific task or topic. Some of the characteristics of consultation, Gail when she reviewed the literature found in Connolly and Connolly in 1982. I might say that the key words here are voluntary, non-supervisory relationship, and really, too, the word established to aid someone in their professional functioning. Typically, I provide consult in situations where the team's requests have been well thought out and the team has done extensive exploration, maybe extensive implementation, or has considerable AT experience. I love the term voluntary in this definition, and of course, well, that depends. Efforts are expected to be voluntary, excuse me, for both the consultant and for the rest of the team. As for non-supervisory relationship, I have a teaching contract, just like all the other members on my team have similar sort of contracts, if not exactly teaching contracts. You know, basically, we are equals. Families and students definitely have unique strengths and knowledge to bring to the team beyond those certificates. Consultation. The goals of this sort of support, this comes directly from Gail Bowser as well. She cites resolution of immediate concern through some type of action or intervention. You know, consult may be appropriate for acquisition of a particular item or a particular service or training that's necessary. Increased knowledge, skill in the recipient of the consultation. You know, consult may be called for when specialized programming or instruction for AAC or some particular computer access is needed. Increased ability to recognize or circumvent a reoccurrence of a concern. You know, a consultant may be valuable in this situation when history, experience, or knowledge helps in determining next steps. Increased ability to apply agency procedures. Sometimes particular roles or job descriptions may play a part in the consultant's ability to make suggestions or serve to provide direction to the team. Usually, this isn't as much based on pure status as it might be based on access to particular services and decision makers in the district. It may be increased knowledge of the quality indicators for AT that we're talking about today. It may be increased familiarity with some of the common errors that both Kathy and Susan have referred to. Some of the examples that I've listed on here on this slide are on-site meetings, and those are those face-to-face meetings that we've been talking about. However, I think some distance learning using video conferences are certainly things that we're going to see more and more of. Emails, these are also good for a quick method of acquiring necessary details of a situation. It can also be a source of confusion, misinterpretation, and possibly frustration. So always keep best practice in mind when emailing. Then there's phone calls. I am personally not a fan of phone calls, and maybe that's because I'm never at my desk. But for some, phone calls are a good method of collecting and disseminating information quickly. Then there's referral forms. These can be in any variety of formats and can be valuable when applied according to the district's guidelines. Cautionary tales exist, though, in terms of considerations around prerequisites and timelines. Charts and various interventions. I'm a big fan of visuals of interventions that maybe are discussed, that are tried, that are assessed. This method definitely overlaps with collaboration. Actually, everything we're talking about in these slides about consultation, collaboration, and coaching overlaps. Then another thing I use are quick start guides for some AT. These have value, especially for operational or strategic needs, possibly providing some quick information for paraprofessionals who work with our students. now we'll talk a little bit about collaboration. Gail found a great definition here by Swift from 2001. Direct interaction between at least two equal parties who voluntarily engage in shared decision-making as they work toward a common goal. Again, you see the word voluntary and equal, shared, and common goals. This statement rolls it all into one. Whether the interaction is in person or virtually, it has to be across the IEP team. It has to be remembered that folks are equal members. No one can make a team engage or collaborate. It can't be forced. Sometimes there are those teams with members who do not participate, cooperate, or share, and sometimes they have just a few team members or one team member like that. Hopefully the teams are made up of strong and devoted members who value collaborating and want to work toward that common goal. Shared decision-making leads to implementation strategies, identification of AT devices, and our services which best support the student in the targeted setting. And then there's common goals. It may seem obvious, but it's important to confirm that the team is on the same page. It is why teams document goals in writing and why the quality indicators exist in the first place. Some characteristics of collaboration. It's a style for creative interaction, which includes dialogue, planning, shared and creative decision-making. A follow-up between at least two equal partners, equal professionals with diverse expertise, in which the goal is to provide appropriate services for students, including high-achieving and gifted. I really appreciate the term creative interaction and creative decision-making in this statement. I also appreciate Hughes and McCloskey including planning and follow-up in their definition from 2001. I'm providing an example today of an implementation strategy form. This is from one of Jane Corson and I's manuals called Every Move Counts, Clicks, and Chats. It's a form designed to lead team collaboration efforts through a series of questions, and it guides the team to examine and discuss and identify critical aspects. Jane Corson and I fondly refer to this form as the Little Red Hen form. Note the rows asking, what is the task? Who will implement? When will the task occur? And where will the implementation take place? This form guides discussion and asks team members for commitment and timelines. Here's the second half of the form of implementation strategies. Dana and I refer to this portion of the Little Red Hen form as Plan D. D stands for data. Still, the Little Red Hen asks who? Who will develop the data collection system? Who will summarize the data? Who will decide when implementation changes should be made? So these are just some more guiding questions to lead a team through all the information that needs to be collected and discussed, collaborated upon to reach some kind of common goal. Our third delivery service model we're talking about today is coaching. The focus of coaching on this slide, another one from Gail. Partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Coaching honors the client as the expert in his or her life and work and believes that every client is creative, resourceful, and whole. And this comes from the International Coaching Federation. Notice creative is included again within coaching. A creative focus that inspires maximizing personal and professional potential. Coaching is just excellent for building capacity. Some characteristics of coaching conversations. This is taken directly from the Impact Cycle book of Jim Knight, 2018. Whoa, that's not quite right. Probably 2016 or 17. So Jim Knight writes, instructional coaches need to listen and guide with an intent to learn rather than an intent to persuade. He views coaching as a process that helps teachers find their voice, not a process to make teachers think a certain way. He advises coaches to realize collaborating teams need to be reflective thinkers. They must be free to think, to adopt or reject ideas. And quickly, here are a couple examples of coaching. If you look at the confirmed direction, be sure your agenda is posted and viewed by everyone, and that helps guide the purpose of the efforts. Review progress sounds very familiar. Discussion of current situation, your PLEP, your PLAF. Review progress reports and data. Invent improvements. This is where the discussion of goals, activities, variety of strategies comes in. And all these are necessary to plan next actions, particularly timelines and data review. Some of the goals of support of effective coaching, which helps people, and this again comes from Gail. She did a review of the literature by Newfield and Roper. Coaching helps teachers apply new ideas, methods, and strategies. Coaching is intended to establish a safe environment in which teachers can strive to improve their practice without fear of negative criticism or evaluation. It also helps teachers develop leadership skills with which they can support the work of their colleagues. So as you can see, coaching really involves building the capacity and using the strengths and knowledge of everybody present. Quickly, this is a Assistive Technology in the IEP Planner. It's a form found in the QIAT book, A Comprehensive Guide to AT Services. It's page 55 and 256. This planner guides an IEP team in considering and documenting the AT and the IEP. It's another system which would encourage a team to review each team member's expertise and the knowledge of the student paired with the knowledge and expertise of AT. There's 3 slides of this so you can see how comprehensive it is. Lots of questions, lots of things to think about. So after reviewing the literature, I want to give a big thank you to Gail Bowser again. And after sharing my perspective, I hope you'll really consider all of these options when you're providing AT. You know, there's no one size that fits all, but there are most certainly ways to improve AT. So through a thoughtful combination of consulting, collaborating, and or coaching, I hope you develop your best practice. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, and we have another poll.
So in thinking about what we just talked about with implementation and what quality services might look like, and then the different ways that you deliver services to people in your district, which approaches do you use to support your IEP teams? And you can select all that apply. So what we're looking at is, do you use consultative services, collaboration, coaching, or a very large combination? Okay, I'm going to go to the results so everybody can see the answers. And it looks like, just as Terry and Susan and I might have guessed, consultation and collaboration are still pretty heavy on how we provide services. And I guess the part that I think about all the time related to that, because the consultative services still seems to be the heavy, the on-site, the I'm the expert, which takes much of our time and does less to build capacity. So if we are still in that consultative role, how does that approach to support and encourage teams to take ownership if we're still so heavily in the consultative piece? And would this concept help you in your efforts to expand general knowledge and build capacity if we look to rolling more toward collaborative and coaching efforts? So it looks like we have a question in the chat box. What tools do you use to foster leadership and coaching skills when working with teams? So, and this is, I know the word of the century now is fluid, but this is something we are working on a lot. We try to do a lot more questioning and ask teams what they want. What do they want out of the session? What do they already know what the student might need? And go in that realm so that they are directing more of the conversation than we are. How about you?
I might add a quick, I'm finding myself right now in the realm of collaboration, and I'm finding some of my teams are quite surprised that I'm trying to draw out information, and I ask so many questions, and I want everybody at the table, and that's the way I hope I'm building some leadership skills with my teammates.
And I guess the only thing I'd like to add, this is Susan, is that in Florida, for example, with our statewide training, we're looking at a program called Environmental Communication Teaching, and we have found so critical to be able to train not just an IEP team, but a district-level facilitator for each of the teams that are going through the training, because that's the only way that we found the transfer of the information and the transfer of the knowledge about how to implement augmentative communication systems for severely challenged kids is really taking hold, is having that local facilitator.
So we want to hear from you too. So we had just gotten the question in the chat box, but we want to know from you, what activities are you doing using the consultative model? And we can answer all three of these at one time if you don't mind. What activities are you doing using the collaborative model? And then lastly, what activities are you doing using the coaching model? And what seems to work for you? So if you don't mind sharing your expertise in the chat box, so that we can share with everybody else that's on the webinar. The backup one. One of the things that we're doing in our district to move away from the consultative model and let teachers access information on their time is really trying to beef up our website. We have looked at a couple websites who seem to do it really well, and of course I'm not going to be able to think of it right now. Who has the matchup tool? You guys remember that? I feel terrible now. But it's the ability for a staff member to go in and say, I'm supporting a student who needs reading support or written expression support, and then walks you through, here are all the tools that might provide you that support. So Special School District is working heavily on that model right now so that teachers can have more information before they get to us. So Christine says she is guiding teachers through problem-solving process and focusing on the task before the tool. Kara has shared that she is meeting with school-based teams to discuss AT topics. That is fabulous, getting out ahead and saying, what do you want to know first, so that they have the information before they even get to student request needs. I just missed one that talked about case studies. Sorry, Heather shared that she's doing case studies and hands-on practice. Kara's working side by side with classroom staff. Facilitating discussions with multiple teams during district-wide trainings. That's another fabulous time because you already have them available and ready to listen. Collaborating with district teams to develop their AT service models. Consult when the team has a challenging case or is in need of further services or resources. And for the collaborative model, Ann says that they support with community resources and workability program specialists to support with wraparound services with the students. More great ideas.
I'm excited that we see so much collaboration being described there. I think that's tremendous. And if people are moving in that direction, that's certainly the right direction. Ladies, we only have about 5 minutes left, and we make sure we leave some time for questions. So let's move on.
Okay.
All right, so just a quick summary again, looking at that district team that I was working with. You know, they looked at the matrices and they made their plan to move away from that expert model. They realized that they were doing too much of the consultation model, moving towards the collaboration, moving towards the coaching. They were using district resources. They weren't using enough district resources, and so one of the things in their plan was to move towards using the district resources to train virtually in many locations at one time, and actually reviewing the tools on the district website so that they could increase knowledge for all staff. And what they're talking about there really was information about the assistive technology process. They also really wanted to take some time and at another future date go over looking at additional indicator areas. And I thought it was so interesting that through all of the discussions we had had that day, they felt they really needed to go back and start with consideration right from the beginning and see where they were with that. So Kathy had mentioned the resource bank early on. I drew this to the attention of the team that I was working with just to make sure that they're not going out and trying to recreate the wheel. There are so many wonderful resources, as Kathy said, some that have been developed by the Quality Indicator Leadership Team and others that are posted by very experienced people throughout the country and internationally. So don't forget that that's there and take advantage of that. Want to draw your attention to the fact that the third webinar in this series is scheduled for December 6th. And that again is 11 a.m. if you're in the Central Time Zone. For me, you know, I'm in the East Coast, so I'm always doing the conversion there to noon. And they're going to be looking at the state, regional, and local program use of the quality indicators to improve and sustain service delivery. And our colleagues who are going to help you walk through that are Joan Breslin-Larson and Diana Foster-Carl. So at this point in time, again, we want to thank AbleNet and questions. We have about 2 minutes. So if you have questions or other comments, please put them into the chat box. Kathy, I don't know if you want to go back and read while people are writing questions, if you want to read any more. Those are wonderful contributions to your attempt to solicit, you know, what they're doing in their situations.
Sure. Laura said that they brainstormed together to discuss what's being used, what's not working, and what might be the next step for improvement, providing training on devices used, and scheduling trainings for support staff. When I saw that, Lynette, I was so excited because very often the support staff are the people who are implementing the technology with the students. And sometimes, even though we do the trainings with teachers and with some of the therapeutic staff, we forget about the support staff. So there's a question, will a copy of these slides be available to those of us to look back on? And I want to say the answer is yes to that.
Yes, there is. There will be a PDF of the slides that's available where the slides are archived on the AbleNet website.
They will also go out in a post-webinar email.
Oh, thank you, Jen.
When I mentioned the AT tool matchup, if you go to the Maryland website, Maryland Learning Links does a fabulous job of helping people move through, when you think about the implementation piece also, the assistive technology tools that might help a student with a specific learning need.
Okay, well, we're right at 1 o'clock, and wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for your participation, and best of